when you put that into iTunes and you hit publish, iTunes says, hey, great, new content. Everybody wants new content. So for the next 2 months, we'll tell people about your new content by putting you in this new and noteworthy catalog or category. Now they put you in there based on a couple of things, and everybody's trying to game, how to increase in the rankings so they appear higher up on the screen. But it appears that the things that affect this the most are how many ratings and reviews you get and how frequently you get them.
Hi, I'm Kingsley Grant.
And I'm Bill Griggs.
And you're listening to Podcast by Friday, where we help you to create your minimal viable podcast by taking bold action to defeat procrastination and get your voice heard. Thank you for joining us on this show, and this is episode number 10. And on today's episode, you will hear us talk about why put your show on iTunes. But not only that, we're going to give you some insight as how we did it and how you could possibly, actually how you ought to do it as well. This way, you can get your show seen and heard by a lot more people than you do. So let's get started. In this segment, you're going to hear us begin the process of kind of brainstorming and talking through what needs to be done and what we did. Take a listen.
Go ahead. You were going to say?
No, I'm saying that the idea of iTunes and why is it that we do need or should be thinking of having our show on iTunes. And I think sometimes it's not the be-all, end-all, but it's one of those major platforms that we have established, and we know, and based on those who we have interacted with in podcasts, that if you don't have your show on iTunes, it's like you don't have your name in the yellow book or the yellow pages of 10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Who can find you if they didn't have a yellow page at the time?
Yeah, we were thinking about this now. Back in the day, if somebody was looking for you, they would go to the phone book to, try and find you. And it was a directory of all the people in the town, everything was out there. And if it was a business, they were in the yellow pages. And the yellow pages was where people were found. I mean, if your bowling alley wasn't in the yellow pages, you weren't going to get any bowlers that night. Well, I think you're very right that iTunes is kind of like the yellow pages of podcasting, because if it's not listed there, most people will never see it.
And even though we have to probably nowadays explain yellow pages to some people, it's like, what, yellow pages, what's that? Who does that anymore? It's surprising. Up until recent months, I would say, maybe up until the last year, I would sometimes come home, Bill, and I would find a yellow page directory on my front step, on my door. I'm thinking, are you serious? Really? And I would just pick it up, and from there, it went straight into my recycling bin. I never even cracked it open. I can't remember when last but I heard someone was talking about, we take things for granted. In some places, rural areas, people still get yellow pages and somehow would refer that, oh yeah, I looked in the yellow pages to see. Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Yeah. See, we look at this and you think of all the millennials that are out there. They may have known about yellow pages and might have used them briefly for a brief second. But for the majority of their life, there has been internet. And for the majority of their life, there has been Google. And when somebody wants to find out something now, they just go to Google or they go to, any number of, Foursquare or any number of these giant search engines that are out there to
Yahoo,
find,
Bing, all those, right?
To find information about people. Now, the one thing that really didn't make it into the internet, though, is phone numbers, really. There is no major phone directory on the internet that is accurate because most people said, no, I don't want that. And they turned it off. So, but,
exactly. Yeah.
But back in the day, if you wanted to contact somebody to know if their business existed and to know how to contact them, you went to the Yellow Pages, a giant book that the phone companies printed once a year that had all the businesses and all the residences in an area in it. And if you missed the deadline as a business person to get your ad into the Yellow Pages, you had a rough year because nobody was calling, spontaneously.
You mentioned about missing deadline, Greg, because, Bill, because I think what happens sometimes, right, the iTunes serving as that for podcast, because what happened is not just submitting a name to the Yellow Page, so to speak, but also submitting your podcast to iTunes. Mm-hmm. And then a deadline, because there's a window, as you described just now, for that entry into the Yellow Page. iTunes create a window that tells you what's the best time to access or to find a show, and they call that new and noteworthy window, right? So I think what I'm hearing you're saying is important for us to have the show on iTunes, which we'll talk about how to get it there in a few moments. But once it's there, is how to capitalize on the window that it creates once it gets there, because it's so critical for people to find the show quickly.
Yeah, one thing that iTunes does very well is it promotes podcasts. It is basically one big ad service. They're free ads for the most part, but when a podcast is popular, iTunes puts an image of that podcast up on the front page of the iTunes app, for the podcast app, so that more people will be able to click on that and listen to it because it's already been proven popular. It's like a meme. But what they do is, in order to facilitate the growth of podcasts, is when we first get started and publish our podcast, our RSS feed. RSS stands for really simple syndication.
Syndicate, yeah.
But or real simple syndication, I think. Anyway, irrelevant. You'll just have one with your podcast. It's just a fancy word for saying a URL that directs people to your podcast. But when you put that into iTunes and you hit publish, iTunes says, "Hey, great, new content. Everybody wants new content. So for the next 2 months, we'll tell people about your new content by putting you in this new and noteworthy catalog or category." Now they put you in there based on a couple of things, and everybody's trying to game, how to increase in the rankings so they appear higher up on the screen. But it appears that the things that affect this the most are how many ratings and reviews you get and how frequently you get them. So if you get a lot of ratings and reviews during that 8-week period and they're consistent and you keep building your audience, iTunes is going to keep moving you up in your category.
I think it's almost like the front page of Google. So people will say, how do you get on the front page? Or you need to be on the front page of the first page of Google, because if you're not, people don't go necessarily to the second or third page to look up what they don't find on the first page. So what I'm hearing is also, in a sense, is how to get on the first page of iTunes with your show so people can go and find it right away and have access, and you're visible to those who are searching for something that like your show.
Yeah. Exactly. And, because it's such a fixed window, it's only 2 months, from the time you start. If you intend to move up in the new and noteworthy category, you've got to do a lot of work very fast. You need to be prepared to do it, and you need to have a plan of action in place to help you. We recently had a guest on an episode, Joel Bogus, and Joel came on the show, and we didn't really get deep into this subject. We kind of glanced over it, but Joel is very good at placing podcasts in the number one spot, because Joel has done it multiple times with his podcast. In fact, his last podcast, the Relaunch Show, placed number one in the new and noteworthy catalog. Or I keep saying catalog, but I mean category.
Category.
Yeah, he placed number one in the new and noteworthy in 3 different categories over the time span of his run. So that automatically gets you, before more people and everything. So Joel has a free intro course that he talks about doing that. And, it's highly recommended you go and check that out. I will put a link in the show notes to it, and we can go from there.
Yeah, and I think that's a great resource that would be helpful for that person who might want to know how to go, as one way to go about doing that. But we also going to put together from ourselves, actually walk you through the same process and showing you how to do that. We're just telling you these are some things that are necessary for a part of your show's success, that you get your show in iTunes. And we had recommended in a previous recording a show that they try to do at about 3 shows. There's no science about the encouragement is to do 3 podcast episodes recorded
minimum,
and then submit. Right? We talked about that before, about this of why it's important or not, and we kind of go back and forth on that. But the point is that it's to get it there. That's the whole point we're talking about in this episode.
Yep. So we're going to have more information on how to do this, and we're going to walk people through the step-by-step, give them some forms that they can fill out to have their notes together in one place before they get started, so that the process will be easier.
And one of the things is to really, as you mentioned earlier about the rating and reviews, is to ask friends, ask family, ask people who you know to listen to the show and ask them to leave that. And we also have a video that kind of show you how to leave a rating and review. As a matter of fact, we would ask that you would do the very same thing for Podcast by Friday. We have a video that's available in the show notes. You will see the link to that can help you to go and actually practice. Here's a way to practice leaving us a rating and review by following the video step by step, and you can just copy the very same thing and tell people to do what you did in leaving us a rating and review. How about that?
I think that's fantastic. One of the reasons that we made the video to show people how to leave ratings and reviews is because it's not an intuitive or easy process. Yeah. I think Apple, now this is just me thinking off the top of my head, but I think Apple makes it difficult to leave a rating and review on purpose. Because if it's difficult to do, only people who really truly enjoy an episode will take the time and the effort to go through the process. Because they make it obscure. It takes somebody a little bit of time to figure it out. That's why we created this video, to clear away that confusion, to cut right through the confusion, to show you, okay, click this button, do this, click that button, so that you could leave a rating and review in under a minute.
And that makes it so much easier. I remember, when I was first exposed to the idea or asked to leave a rating and review, I had to go figure it out. I really didn't, I thought it was very, 1, 2, 3, it's so easy to go. No, but it takes a little to do. It takes a little bit, if you don't know exactly the steps, you can get lost in the process. And who wants to be frustrated? You're asking someone, the last thing they want to do is to have to put work and time and effort to go figure out how to do that. And I find that if people can take a handheld and make it easier for them, then the chance is much more likely they will go ahead and leave that rating and review, which is so critical, as you mentioned earlier, especially for that 8-week period. One thing I also like, Bill, is the fact that other people can help you, give you the opportunity, to expose your podcast. And we're so appreciative to two guys who we have known for many years, and they have, been very, very successful in so many ways. And Bill, you did something recently that allowed us to have a little bit more exposure rather than just us doing it ourselves. You want to talk about what happened there?
Yeah. Kingsley, you and I both met through a group that we belong to.
Okay, just before Bill get into what I believe a number of podcasters may be doing behind the scenes, I don't know, but you don't hear much mentioned. But he is going to share a secret with you about how to get additional exposure for your podcast. It is not complicated. As a matter of fact, you'll be surprised how easy it is. But stay tuned for that. Before we get there, though, I wanted to say again, thank you for joining us on Podcasts by Friday. And as Bill said, we would love to hear from you. Would you email us at podcast@podcastbyfriday.com. And in addition to that, we're asking you, as you are listening to the show, to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. That would help us with our show being found by so many other people and allow them to get a similar benefit as you are in listening to this show. I really want to ask of you, on behalf of Bill and I, that you would do that. And that way is your way of saying to us, thank you for the show. And it's your appreciation for what we do here. That's all we're asking. We're not asking for much, are we? I don't think so. So thank you for doing that. And now let's get back to hearing what Bill had to say, I believe, as a powerful tool or a powerful way to get more exposure. And guess what? You can do that easily. Bill, take it away.
Yeah, Kingsley, you and I both met through a group that we belong to. We're both fans of a podcast that we listen to called Internet Business Mastery. And Jason Van Orden and Jeremy Franzen are the host of that show. And they have a private Facebook group that we're members in. And that's how we met through that. And one of the things that they do is they feature breakthroughs of the members of their community, because their whole thing is about teaching people how to have online businesses, you know, whether it's a blog or a podcast or whatever. And basically what I did was I just wrote them a brief message inside of the group telling them what we had been up to and the things that we had accomplished, and, you know, thanking them for that. And so the other day, I was listening into their episode 340 of Internet Business Mastery Podcast. There'll be a link in the show. And at the end of the show, after they had talked with their guest host, Jenny Blake, about her book Pivot, at the end of that, they said, hey, and today's breakthrough goes out to Bill Griggs, and I nearly fell off the chair. But they read the information that I left about our podcast, how we had gone to the podcast movement, and we launched this podcast by the Friday following the podcast. And one of the reasons, I'll just read you the first paragraph. It says, I remember Jeremy and Jason saying in an episode that live events were game changers for them and really boosted them to the next level. Well, this year that's really proved to be the case. At the beginning of the month, I attended the Podcast Movement Conference in Chicago, and I was very fortunate to have Academy member Kingsley Grant attend with me. Kingsley and I met through the Academy and then in person at last year's Podcast Movement, and it goes on. But it's basically just telling the story of, you know, how we got together, had this idea, and then executed on it. And it's all because we went to a live event. And so they read this, and then they talked about it. Go ahead, Kingsley.
I was going to say, because I think, Bill, you took action. You didn't. You know, I think sometimes we kind of wait for things to happen. So what I really admire was the fact that you decided, you know, is not because you wanted them to necessarily feature you. You just want to say thank you and let them know that their work, quote, have not been in vain, unquote. And here is what has come as a result of their coaching and mentoring that we received from them in the group that we're a part of. And I think you just did that, and they chose, you didn't ask them to, they chose to do that. And sometimes just by serving people and saying thank you, we never know how they can also return us. And they have a very big platform. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of featured there, which I think also created more of a buzz around Podcast by Friday, so people can go and listen to more of what we are saying, what we're doing, and also can get us more exposure on iTunes by leaving us rating and reviews as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard from several of their members, congratulating us and saying, great job. And I've also heard from a lot of folks on Twitter that I would have not, expected or otherwise been exposed to through that. So it always helps to thank people. And I really would like to thank Jeremy Franson and Jason Van Orden, for putting together that great community that they have and, encouraging us to form accountability partnerships. That's how I got to know Kingsley. And
I'm so glad that we were in the same group.
Yeah. So, it never hurts to tell people thank you.
And I think especially in this early stage of trying to get yourself more exposure, and you're not necessarily, again, having an agenda. You're just saying thank you genuinely, and people will do business with those they know, love, they know, trust, and like. And you're getting to be known and to be trusted and to be liked by these people. They'll, in turn, in this case, for example, be willing to do something like what we're just suggesting here. So Bill, the idea then of what I'm hearing you say so far is, what we have said is the importance of having your show on iTunes is like having your business in the yellow page. So it's the how to do that, how to also get your show on the first page, so to speak, of iTunes. It's like getting your business or your whatever your company on the first page of Google, right? So you're trying to find a way to do that, and that's through rating and review. We also talk about the idea of giving gratitude, thanking people for part of the journey we're on, and just genuinely doing that. And sometimes it has a payback, and sometimes it doesn't have to be. It's just you're saying thank you. What would you say then, as far as what we discussed so far, that is important to summarize in what we've discussed in this show?
I think the most important part that this all tells you is, you have to let people know that you're there, and you have to let people know when you are there that you appreciate the fact that they're listening to you or that they've done things for you. It is just, amazing. I would not be where I am today without the help of, Jason and Jeremy, Joel Bogus. I could go down the list of people for hours, and it's not because I'm, anything's really super special that I'm doing. The only thing I'm doing is taking action. But because, I try and form an actual relationship with people that I meet online. And I think that's probably crucial to growing any endeavor that you're doing online, that you be a real person, that you, say what you mean what you say, and, be thankful, be grateful.
Yeah. I agree. That is so critical or so crucial to me for any kind of success. And also we want you to know that we've put together a video that will walk you through basically how to leave a rating and review. And you can watch the video, and you'll find the link in the show notes, as a matter of fact. But also, we're asking you to do for us what we're asking you to do ask people to do for you. Here's a good way to go and leave us a rating and review. And we are also going to be putting together in the very near future a video recording showing you how this idea of building up your show through iTunes and making it successful, and what goes all into that. We'll be doing that as well in the very near future. So stay tuned for that.
Yep. Now, if you'd like to see this video that we've discussed on how to leave a rating and review, you can go to podcastbyfriday.com/review. And that will take you to this video. And you can watch that and just follow the steps. And we'll try and make it as easy as possible for you to do that. But we really do appreciate if you would leave a rating and review for us, particularly over the next 8 weeks, because,
Well, actually, leave it for us today. Once you go ahead and watch it, don't get up from watching it if you can. I mean, obviously, if you're driving or are out someplace. Well, hopefully you're not driving, but if you're out someplace. But we're asking to please just take some time, and I would just say as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, within the next 24 hours, to make sure you leave that rating and review.
Exactly. Take action.
There you go, right? Mm-hmm. Action leads to success. And if you're going to be successful, let's see, here's an opportunity to show that success is on your mind.
Now, an even more important takeaway from this, for you, the listener, who's thinking about launching their podcast by Friday, is that you may want to do a similar thing with your podcast when you get it out there. This video is going to be out on YouTube. It's it's available through our website and the whole 9 yards. But there's nothing to say that you can't do the same thing for your listeners. It's another way of removing a barrier for them, recognizing your podcast, that it was helpful to them and that it was worth reviewing. So make things as easy as possible for your listeners.
And if a person wants to get in touch with us, or just to maybe through an email, or what's the best way for them to contact us?
They can email us at podcast@podcastbyfriday. And we read all the emails that come in there. We'd be glad to help if we can. I am on Twitter, at Bill Griggs. Kingsley, you're on Twitter
at Kingsley Grant, KingsleyGrant. So at Twitter, at Kingsley Grant, you can find me.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to spell Griggs, it's Griggs. So that's at Bill Griggs. So, that's two ways to get a hold of us.
And we know that you will, because we are waiting to hear from you. And if you don't, we're going to come after you. Not this time around, but maybe next time.
Yeah. Come, just come talk to us. We're Kingsley's a teddy bear. Come on.
Yeah. And Bill, don't be intimidated by his deep baritone voice, because Bill is really a cool guy. Trust me, you get to know him, you'll like him, you'll love him, and we want you to be a part of what we're trying to do, but also we want you to be successful. That's why we're doing this for you.
Exactly.